Members, we are at order of the day 1, address in reply. This is the honourable member's inaugural speech, and as such the usual conventions and courtesies of the chamber apply. The Honourable Maryka Groenewald.
Thank you, President, and congratulations on your re-election, and thank you everybody. Epic team effort to allow everybody to filter in, so I really appreciate that. Writing this speech was quite nostalgic, actually. I've reflected on the people, the places, the triumphs, the detours that have honestly shaped the last 38 years of my life. But before I launch into that, to Sam and the team, Rob and the team, and every staff member and corridor and office in between, thank you for your patience, your guidance. It's been incredible. To every honourable member, I've really enjoyed getting to know each of you. I value your responsibility to listen, to lead, and to legislate with integrity. I've taken snippets from everybody's speeches, and it's just really been valuable and lovely insight. No doubt there will be many sighs, there will be many eye rolls as we see through the next 4 years, maybe even the Honourable Pierre Yang eventually taking my answers or questions sitting down. But we've all been shaped by our convictions, and it's brought us to this place. And I really hope that mutual respect and some good conversations are had along the way. Needless to say, President, I've learnt a lot about leadership, about me, and about staying steady when life throws you curveballs. I wish I could say the whole journey was smooth sailing, but President, that would be far from the truth. One thing is for sure, I've grown more in my faith over the last decade than ever, and that's politics. It either makes you or breaks you, right? Now, it's easy to reflect on these things now and find meaning in all of it, but it didn't feel so inspiring on Wednesday, the 26th of February. We were 1 week into pre-poll. I was driving back late from a candidate forum, tired, hungry, mountain of tasks ahead of me, and to be honest, pretty ready for the election to be over. And any other member who says otherwise is totally fibbing. I was driving along and those golden arches of McDonald's forced me through a drive-through. Cheeseburger, fries, no regrets. Or so I thought, President. I struggled with pain the next day, and I remember thinking, serves you right, Maryka, who has McDonald's 10 o'clock at night? Powered through, pushed through, but by Friday morning, my husband actually had to rush me to emergency. Diagnosis, not bad Macca's, President, appendicitis. I honestly couldn't believe it. Here I was being wheeled into emergency surgery 1 week before polling day. Now for background, I'm a planner. I like consistency, I like things being factored in, I don't like surprises, and obviously this was not in the plan. Now usually this would be a disaster for me, and in that moment you would really expect panic. But strangely enough, this familiar peace. Pain nonetheless, but peace. And it wasn't the first time I'd experienced this. There have been countless moments in my life where this familiar peace really has carried me through. I just knew that every conversation, workshop, forum, action meeting, everything that I could have done was already done. And if our foundations were strong enough, those foundations would withstand a few storms. And you know what? They did. Despite looking at a 4 to 6 week recovery, the doctors telling me things could have been a lot worse, by the grace of God, I was back in the office the following Thursday and Friday, slowly making phone calls, checking in on the team. It just meant so much to me to be able to see this thing through with a group of people who have been so dedicated and have sown in so much time and effort. By Saturday, I was excited to be out and about on polling day being my favourite day. I spent the days on booths, chatting to voters and volunteers, handing out how to vote cards, and even removing some call flutes, albeit at a slower pace. Now, I hope you take from this story not just that I've got an unreasonable commitment to late-night cheeseburgers, but I'm tough and I'm competitive and I never give up, ever. And I don't like letting my team down or the people around me. Luckily, millennial kids were built tough, President. You had to be half dead before Mum would let you skip school, and that seems to have paid off. So thanks, Mum. I've learned to embrace this gracious but gritty approach, and it's really helped me power through a heap of challenges over the years. It's how I've lived, it's how I've led. One thing has consistently anchored me, and that has been the living, breathing Word of God and His unshakable peace. This is as true standing here today as it was in hospital about to undergo emergency surgery. There is this proverb that I've held so close over the last 25 years, and it's in Proverbs 3, verse 7, 5-7. Trust in the Lord your God with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your path straight. The story of Jesus, His resurrection, and the transforming truth of the gospel remains the biggest game changer in my life. Now, that doesn't mean I haven't made mistakes, President, or that I won't make any in the future, but I have done my best to live by these values and to honour them. Mum and Dad modelled a life of generosity and sacrifice, and I'm very lucky to have a family that raised me with these values and still remind me of them along the way. I was blessed to grow up with a family that gave me the full confidence and encouragement to do anything I set my mind to. Except for being an F-18 pilot. Turns out I wasn't quite smart enough for that. So I spent my time at Jandakot Airport volunteering, getting my private licence and washing Cessnas instead. In hindsight, President, being stuck in a confined space with one other person for hours on end, probably not the best career choice for me after all. As the name suggests, my familial roots aren't quite Australian, but South African. I was born south of Johannesburg in a small suburb called Mayfield Park, unbeknownst to me, 20 minutes from Soweto. It was a great childhood. Family braais, or barbecues, neighbourhood gatherings, peri-peri sauce and rugby was life. My Omi and Opie, grandparents, raised me, and both Mum and Dad had to work. There was no financial support to lean on. You really had to rely on the village of people around you. Family, grandparents, aunties, neighbourhood nannies, and ours was Maria Makoba. She was a grandma with huge hugs and warm smile, and also made the best millipup, which is kind of like polenta, but South African. My grandma deserves a whole speech in her honour. She really was one of a kind. She had a wicked sense of humour, unlimited supply of patience, tough, feisty, wrote the most beautiful poetry, and instilled in me such a curiosity for people, Jesus, and learning. She never turned a blind eye to the needs around her. It could be angels were entertaining, Grandma used to say to me, as she would grab one of the many empty 5-litre ice cream tubs, filling them with sandwiches for someone who was hungry at the gate. I can actually still smell her freshly baked scones when I talk about her. I started school just as South Africa was finding its new rhythm as the Rainbow Nation. There was much hope for reconciliation and a new path forward. It's sad to see how division has affected this beautiful country. My school was a mix of township, suburb and regional kids. You would go from Sawubona, Salagashla, Mkhaya to Goeiemorgen to Good Morning, all before starting school. Now, most of us grew up speaking 2 to 3 languages, and I loved it. The people, the culture, the landscape. I did every sport, competitive, remember? Smashed a few records, led the netball team, did our Stedfords, and even sang in a youth choir. We got selected to compete in the Choir Olympics. Yes, there is such a thing. And I shouldn't laugh, but a dodgy tour operator actually ran away with everybody's money. So instead of going to Austria, we stayed in South Africa. By the time we packed up our shipping container in 2001 to make the big move, none of us could imagine what would happen in the lead-up. My dad was hijacked and shot, left on the side of the road. By nothing short of a miracle, a friend's father from school happened to drive past and recognised him on the side of the road. I'll never forget that day. It was that same experience and hearing of many like it that actually led me years later to advocate in this very place with others, calling on the government to offer special humanitarian visas to farmers affected by targeted violence. Many families fled with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Some of them actually sat with us on the plane over. We arrived in Perth at the height of the mining boom. FIFO life was such an odd adjustment, almost unnatural at first, but Mum and Dad made it work. Whether we like to admit it or not, this way of life has its perks, but it also takes a toll. The disconnect, time apart, the emotional strain, it does quietly chip away at families. That's why I want to honour and thank Diana Salvarinoff, who leads corporate chaplaincy services across WA and on FIFO sites. She was also my chaplain for 7 years. It was a privilege to serve on the board and advocate for better programs with you, Dee. Throwing gym memberships at people, hoping it fixes mental health challenges, just isn't cutting it anymore. People need real conversations, connections, and the right tools. I was lucky enough as well to have an incredible school chaplain at Careen Senior High School. Adapting to a new country, a new school, and skipping year 8 was tough. But having an accent, being overly polite, and believing drop bears were real didn't do me any favours either. I somehow ended up as a prefect, and am forever grateful for an amazing year coordinator, teachers and friends who really did embrace me with open arms. I found myself immersed in so many random projects over the last 18 years, and they've all been incredible opportunities to learn, listen and serve. I was involved in youth groups, playing PlayStation, volleyball and skateboarding, more like skatefalling with the kids. We ran breakfast programs in schools during the day, and so many young people would then come along to programs on a Friday night to escape a home situation or simply just to hang out with friends in a safe space, but probably most likely to watch me fall off skateboards. I hosted forums, was a youth advisor for the National Council of Women, and led grassroots initiatives to combat human trafficking. Please don't laugh, but one of these strategies was placing striking ads in the adult services section of the classifieds, urging readers to support suspected trafficking. It was unconventional and so embarrassing, but we got some tip-offs and were actually able to support several girls. One was even declared missing by her mother. I later found out that many of these young girls often come over from smaller villages. They were promised work in hospitality in Western Australia. They were given some money, a suitcase, even a uniform, and they would then arrive in Western Australia to have all their identification documents stripped off. I want to honour the organisations and units for their ongoing dedication working in this space, many putting their lives on the line to actually support women wanting to exit the sex industry as well. Visiting Kerabakan prison and hearing firsthand about some of these stories from prisoners and families was really sobering. But that's a conversation for another day. I've worked closely with children and young people in care, advocating for better outcomes, more stable living options, and helping them understand their rights as they transitioned into adulthood. I'll never forget the moment my manager Saba and I found out that at the time people, when they were leaving care, were often putting their belongings in a black garbage bag, and we couldn't believe it. So we changed that real quick. And so I've loved journeying with these young people and really enjoyed partnering with them still, some of those. Education has also been close to my heart. My journey with the Smith family began originally with a university research project, and I looked at how mentorship impacted Aboriginal students pursuing degrees at universities. I later joined them in the Learning for Life program, and it opened my eyes. You know, I think we're sometimes so aware of the needs here right in our own backyard, but was very, very grateful to support families and children through their school journey and also some through uni. There were so many competing needs everywhere, and if there wasn't enough to do, it was also during that time that I got involved in a project supplying stationery to children in refugee camps across Thailand and Southeast Asia. Many of these kids had never held a full packet of coloured pencils in their life or even owned a colouring book. It's also one of the reasons I still love and support Operation Christmas Child through Samaritan's Purse. The joy on their faces over something so simple embedded some important perspectives and priorities for me and the direction I wanted to go professionally and personally. Working in community development has been one of my greatest joys. I helped design and implement an incentive-based program that ran across 80 schools in Western Australia, Northern Territory and South Australia. Translated into 14 languages, the concept was quite simple: get parents and carers more involved in the school and boost regular attendance. We had schools from Headland and Albany, even Mullawa, and pretty much everywhere in between. I learned so much about our regional and remote communities, and I look forward to making this program available again. Together with local schools, we created tailored activities that suited each of them uniquely, from helping in the canteen to community garden to helping their kids read. Every effort earned points that families could redeem for school-related items, from power cards to lunch packs to school uniforms to school photos. Even proper burly leather footies for the boys at Mullawa and Meekatharra. It gave parents a sense of purpose, and it gave students a reason to turn up. It transformed our schools into hubs of community life. I remember one principal actually telling me that vandalism stopped in his school because kids knew their parents were helping in the canteen, and they knew they were earning points towards footy socks for the next season. So it was incredible to watch this transformation and culture change take place. We even extended the program into prisons, and incarcerated parents were able to contribute to their child's education by completing rehab programs that earned school rewards. It gave them dignity and connection. The results were really remarkable. Every site saw improvement. But what stuck with me most were the lessons. Listening to the community is so powerful, but follow through even more so. Because so often what a community really needs looks very different to the policy frameworks or the guidelines that they're handed. Red tape, shifting government priorities, lack of time, under-resourcing made long-term planning almost impossible. Ironically, our funding at the foundation was cut due to departmental restructuring, and so the program sadly ceased. And President, that's how I ended up in prison. Volunteering. When you're out of work and you sent off your 100th job application, you start wondering what you're even doing. So not being the sit-around type, I started volunteering at church, just typing up notes for home group. As is often the case in church life, there's always people coming and going, different volunteer organisations, different people. And one day I found myself chatting to Dave, who worked in detention centres and prisons. Now, after his 5th anecdote, and me still thinking, buddy, you're not going to convince me to volunteer in a prison, he said to me, would you like to come and help at a prison? What was I going to say, President? That I was too busy, too comfortable, too busy typing up notes? So next minute, I found myself saying yes, singing songs with a group of ukulele players in Northam and supporting a program for young people at Wandoo. That one yes opened the door to something so much bigger. I began working across a few prison sites in our state, helping with a rehab program where victors and offenders would sit together and share their stories and experiences. It was pretty raw and it was really real. It actually changed how I saw justice and redemption, especially for our youth. I also coordinated the Angel Tree Project, which brought together groups across Perth to deliver Christmas gifts from incarcerated parents to their children. The look on those kids' faces, just knowing mum or dad hadn't forgotten them, was priceless. Every one of these experiences have so profoundly shaped me. I listened more, assumed less, and stopped underestimating the resilience of people when they're given a chance to thrive. As you've probably gathered by now, I actively avoided politics for most of my life. It had to find me, and eventually it did. Up until that point, the only dabble I had was running in a local council election. My manager at the time, the incredible Sue Oliver, a lady I so admire, turned to me one day out of the blue and said, I was watching Q&A last night and I really think you'd be good at that, Maryka, because you don't fluff around. And I laughed thinking, well, you know, I wasn't a member of any political party. I wasn't really interested. Politics was something I left to other people. Less than a week later, I was clearing out my junk mail folder, which I never do, and there it was, an ad for the role of State Director at Australian Christians. Something stirred. It was another marker in time and reminder about trusting the path. I had complete peace again. I just knew that this was the next season ahead. Now, President, I know I won't get this opportunity again, so allow me to briefly digress and honour the humble beginnings of Australian Christians here in WA and the extraordinary people who have so faithfully served for the last 30 years. For the past 9, I've had the privilege of leading the Australian Christians Party in WA, solidifying its foundation and increasing its visibility and reach alongside each of them. What an incredible group of persistent and exceptionally patient people. In particular, I want to pay tribute to Marge Laurie, a tireless disability advocate who was bound to a wheelchair and affected by polio for most of her life, but it didn't stop her. She fought courageously for accessible transport, and driven by justice and compassion, it lit a spark. From her humble kitchen, alongside her husband Brian, Marge began the first unofficial AC group in '92. She was authentic, passionate and unwavering, exactly the kind of foundation any movement needs. This moment, this victory, President, belongs to her and the countless volunteers, members and donors who have laboured with hope over the last several decades, many who join me in the gallery today. Popping up before an election is easy, but I'm so proud that we have established a party that is committed to equipping and serving its community in between elections and is built to last. I know AC will go from strength to strength, and I'm excited about the young people tuning in. It's in good hands. Being politically involved for almost 10 years has also opened my eyes to some of the deeper challenges we're up against. I have noticed a bit of a shift. We are quietly rewriting what it means to be free in this nation, and it is troubling. Whether you're on a farm, in the city, or raising your kids in the suburbs, freedom matters. Freedom to speak, freedom to worship, freedom to raise your family. Every Aussie, whatever they believe, should have the right to live and speak freely without fear of being shut down, cancelled, or ostracised. Now, I'm not here to push my faith on anyone, and contrary to what people think it means, separation of church and state was always about preventing an exertion of power of the state over the church and vice versa, not actually about limiting Christian expression in the public space. I do believe we can restore some of that balance. In recent years, we have seen some laws passed through this House that have deeply concerned me and many others. Right now, there are serious moves to strip Christian schools of their freedom to employ staff who want to live out their faith. If passed, these recommendations would force schools to compromise their convictions. It's a direct hit on religious freedom and parental choice in education. The Australian Law Reform Commission wants to remove long-standing protections that also allow religious schools to teach and uphold truth on gender and relationships. This would effectively silence Christian staff and water down the very identity of our schools. If we lose our voice here, where will it stop? WA is also planning to introduce laws that would make prayer and pastoral care illegal, especially when it relates to sexuality and gender. We're talking about everyday conversations, possibly facing criminal charges for simply having a conversation. Equally concerning is the ripple effects of the UK's CAS review, which raises red flags about the lack of evidence around gender-affirming care. Yet here in WA, the treatments remain available to children despite the mounting international caution. And I can't stand here without raising one of the most heartbreaking and urgent issues in our state, the plight of our children. Coroner Fogliani's inquest into the suicides of Aboriginal children in the Kimberley really shook me. These were kids, some as young as 10, lost to despair, poverty, trauma and silence. The system really did fail them. We need urgent reform in how we protect vulnerable children, and that means mental health support, programs, long-term funding, restoring family and community structures, and rebuilding trust, especially in our Aboriginal communities. No child in Western Australia should feel so hopeless, so unseen, that death feels like the only way out. Despite some of these responses, significant issues persist with our most vulnerable in WA. It was in 2023, while sitting right up there in that gallery, that I also watched as WA passed some of the most extreme abortion laws in this country. Late-term abortions, even up to birth in certain cases. While researching every clause, I really struggled to comprehend how anybody could oppose recognising the life of a baby born alive following an abortion procedure. It was labelled as misinformation. Why would anybody lie about such a horrendous thing? Eliminating the coroner's duty to investigate these deaths also stripped away essential oversight and transparency. The most vulnerable became the most forgotten. These laws dismiss the humanity of the unborn, overlook the lasting toll on women, and disregard the vital work that pregnancy support centres play in our states. Our laws should reflect the inherent value of every human life because so much flows from that very foundation. At the opening of every sitting of Parliament, we are reminded of our duty, and with that comes a call, actually an obligation, to act with courage and honesty. So, President, in closing, I want to take a moment to give thanks and share some final thoughts. To the AC Originals who have stayed the course over the last 30 years, thank you for starting those crucial conversations and never giving up. To my incredible staff and volunteers, thank you for holding the line behind the scenes, year in, year out. To the AC prayer team, Cynthia, and our network of dedicated pastors and leaders across WA, you guys are the engine room. Thank you for lifting this state, its leaders and people in prayer every Wednesday without fail. To the current AC Council, our outstanding and dedicated candidates, tireless volunteers and members, you are the backbone of AC. To my amazing group of friends, quality over quantity. Thank you for sticking around after all these years and elections, for the hugs, the memes, the meals, and putting up with my texts, even though I often sent them months later. To my pastors in my church, thank you for being my village. To my husband, Rian, the man you can thank for this wonderfully complicated surname. You've climbed every mountain with me, highs and lows. Yes. We started our marriage in the middle of uncertainty. I just lost my job and with it a sense of direction. But your calm nature, support and patience, pretty much the only reasons I've made it this far. Thank you for laughing every time I said this is my last election and faithfully pointing me back to the path. To my mum and dad, thank you for your sacrifice and for always giving me what I needed to thrive. I know how much it cost you. Mum, your generosity, your heart for people, work ethic and grit are unmatched. You worked 3 jobs from dusk to dawn to place a roof over our heads and to help me with uni books and bills. Those were tough years, we made it through. And to Kizzy, who will always be my baby sister, who flew in all the way from Townsville with mega flight delays and no Wi-Fi. That is love. You are one of the best things in my life. I reluctantly waved goodbye to you as you got on a bus at 21 to move to another state to join the Defence Force. Your resilience amazes me. From overcoming spiders and mice in Kapuka to seasickness on missions off the coast, you might be stronger than me, but I'm still taller. Keep your gaze fixed on the right things and the rest will follow. Adapt and overcome. I believe with all my heart that every West Australian has a hope and a future, but it's a choice, and right now we're standing at a crossroads. Australia's foundations are solid, President, even if we've forgotten them. Our legal system, our freedoms, our sense of fairness, they just didn't fall from the sky. They were built on a Christian heritage that honours dignity, mercy, compassion and personal responsibility. One that says every life is valuable, that truth matters and that justice must be tempered with grace. These are not outdated values, they are actually essential. They're the reason we've enjoyed peace, freedom and stability. Take them away and everything begins to wobble. That's why I hope to give voice to these values again. Not to impose, but to inspire, not to dominate, but to dignify, not to shame, but to remind people of what's worth protecting. Now, I don't have all the answers, but I do know this. We need to restore some truth, balance and hope. I believe politics at its best is service, perhaps naively so, and leadership at its most powerful is courageous and sacrificial. I love what Chuck Swindoll said all those years ago. I invite you to do a courageous thing. Face the truth, peel off the mask and just talk to God. I'm so grateful I did. It changed everything. My steps are ordered, my path is straight, and I look forward to walking it with the amazing people of WA and each of you over the next 4 years. Thank you, President.
Well done.
Thank you. Oh, thanks, Stephen. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks, Simon.
All the Greens as well.
Yes, that's true. Oh, thanks.
Great speech, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you. You spoke with such passion. And we took with passion. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Well done. That was very heartfelt and energetic. I really enjoyed that.
Lisa was energetic, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you.